about what's happening in the banking sector right now. Is this a banking crisis? Is this financials in turmoil? Is this banking crisis 2.0? What would you call what we've been seeing happen?
Well, I would say that some of the dumb things that banks do periodically, have become uncovered during this period, and as one of the banker told me one time, he says, "I don't know why we keep looking for new ways to lose money when the old ones are working so well." And they made the same mistake, some banks, in this period by they haven't made as many mistakes. They expect to make some mistakes in making loans, but they haven't, and particularly if you're getting into credit card loans, I mean, that's just part of the game. But they haven't made the same sort of mistakes that they made back in 2008 or 9. But they have mismatched assets and liabilities, and bankers have been tempted to do that forever, and every now and then it bites them in a big way. And it's just amazing to me that banks could make presentations to financial analysts and everything, and if one bank bought a bond at 100 and another bought it at 96, and they both held a maturity. One bank carries it at 100 and another bank carries it at 96. I mean, it is accounting procedures have driven some bankers to do some things that may have helped their current earnings a little bit and caused the recurring temptation to get a little bit bigger spread and report a little more in earnings, and it ended in a result you could predict. You couldn't predict when it would happen, and then once they start looking at one that does it, then they start looking at others, and pretty soon, that everybody is in a position of looking at a number that nobody looked at when it was presented to them a year ago, if you read the 10K or anything of the sort. But the banks did not call attention to what they were doing when it was going on, and I would read investor contact when they would have meetings with financial analysts or the people who follow banking, and nobody even brought up the point virtually. And believe me, if we've got a $50 billion loss or something in Berkshire, we would expect people to know about it. And it's happened before. It's happened this time. It'll happen again someday.
Did you see this? You were reading through the reports. You followed all these banking earnings that were coming in. So you noticed it. You saw it?
Sure, I noticed it.
Is that why you sold so many of the banking stocks you own?
We sold a number of banks. I mean, we had held some of them for 25 years, but I don't like it when people get too focused on the earnings number and forget what my view is basic banking principles. I'm not going to get into naming any names or anything like that, but it happened to varying degrees throughout the industry. And the politicians say, well, the big banks did this. And that isn't true. I mean, I know who has been holding long-term instruments, and if let's take commercial mortgages or something of the sort, that they carry them at cost, basically, and they can't sell them at that cost. And it's important that banks retain the confidence of the public, and they can lose it, in seconds. And we saw a country that was not worried about banks, until about Wednesday or Thursday of the week when Silicon Valley fell apart. And then all of a sudden everybody was worried about it all over the country. And the interesting thing, of course, is that it will not cost the government a penny. I mean, people think that, that somehow the government's going to get hung up with us. The FDIC is in effect, a very peculiar mutual insurance operation that is run by the government but is financed by the banks. And FDIC had 120 billion or so at the start of the year, and that's all money that banks have paid in, less what the FDIC has had to pay out on losses. If the FDIC has to pay out 250 billion this time or 300 billion, they just assess the banks more, and they don't do it in a very business-like manner because the public has the impression that the FDIC is the United States government and that so on. And of course, they do appoint the people, but the costs of the FDIC, including the cost of their employees, everything else, is borne by the banks. So banks have never cost the federal government a dime, but that the public doesn't really understand the whole FDIC thing, and the comments of public officials confuse it and the issue enormously. Somebody ought to write. I mean, the FDIC was set up to operate on, I think, January 1st, 1934. You'd think somebody would have gotten through to writing what's the essence of this FDIC, which was a fantastically good development of the New Deal. I mean, 2,000 banks failed in, I don't know whether it was 1920 or 21. Well, there's only, I don't know, something less than 5,000 banks in the United States. And I mean, it was a paralyzing thing to have a bank failure in this country. And my dad lost his job in 1931. He lost his savings. And it was because a bank failed that he worked at downtown in Omaha. And people shouldn't be worried about losing their money and the deposits they have in an American bank. And today they have no reason to worry. But the message has gotten very confused, and people don't really understand how it all works. And politicians can make hay out of it, and all kinds of these bad things happen when people don't understand some major institution and who actually bears the costs and what the responsibilities are. And nobody is going to lose money on a deposit in the U.S. bank. I don't know about the rest of the world. I don't know. I'm not that familiar with it. But it's not going to happen. And that message has gotten mixed up.